Thank you. Hiya, my name's Andy O, and I am an adult child. And thank you for inviting me to come and share at Limerick. It's a privilege to be able to do a share on my experience, strength, and hope. And what I'm going to do, I've thought about what I'm going to do. I'm going to share mostly my experience from when I came into ACA, but I'm going to refer to the past sometimes. I came into ACA when I say I'm an adult child. It means that I have difficulty with adult situations. I respond sometimes from a place of child, doubt, fear, blame, and a general feeling of inferiority. And it's not as apparent today as it was when I first came in. I was very, very confused, really hurt, very deeply frightened, but I wouldn't admit it. So I came into ACA in the pandemic. March, April 2020, I met a fellow traveller at Coda, and I had experienced a recovery from drugs and alcohol. So I'm not really going to talk about that. I learned a culture of step work in treatment, which showed me what the problem was, and it showed me a solution. And we call it the steps. But to find those steps, I had to come to meetings and I had to get identification with other people. So if my share's general, I'm sharing in a general way on purpose so that people can relate to me. So when I came in, I started to use the ACA steps and workbook. I will just share how I felt at that CODA meeting. I went to 2 CODA meetings and there was a very calm guy on my left and a guy who shared that he felt defensive on my right. And on my right, I sensed this guy feels defensive because he can feel the waves of anger coming off me because I felt angry and hurt and I'd never really known what to do with it. I couldn't kind of get rid of it. I tried to rationalize it away. I tried to hide it. I tried to channel it into other addictions, but it hadn't worked. It kept coming back to me. So when this guy called Bash, he said to me, "You might like ACA," because I'd already done some questions in Coda. I'd got hold of a book. I got hold of some questions online, and there were 30 questions, and they were on steps 1, 2, and 3. I was already really familiar with these. Step 1's the problem, me. 2 is a solution, a plan to help me, and 3 is a decision to do it. So I'd looked at the hurt that I experienced as a kid. I'd looked at it many times, but this time was different because I felt it. So my first fellow traveller was called Basharat, and he gave me his time and he shared his experience with me and told me the truth. He showed me the way. He wasn't dressing it up, but he was really calm about it. And the stuff he shared with me really, really helped me. He said that he came into recovery with a lot of defences, and he said he had so many defences, it was unreal, and he used to joke, he had a great sense of humour. So I was 50 years old when I came into ACA. I felt really hurt and depressed and isolated. I felt very, very lonely. I was full of anger and fear. And I already had seen and knew about the problem, my problem. And my problem was emotional pain. That was what my problem was. I never really learned how to deal with emotional pain. I'd just come out of another relationship, and I'd had many, many relationships, none of which worked out. I felt very hurt and resentful because of that. But every time a relationship ended, I blamed myself. I blamed myself because I wasn't able to stay in the relationship because it hurt too much, way too much to stay in. And so I was full of remorse about that, full of anxiety, and I felt really fragile and vulnerable underneath. So I was well acquainted with the language of denial, and I started to use the ACA steps, and I got the workbook. I remember laying in bed, imagining myself in a meeting, a real meeting, saying, "My name's Andy and I'm an adult child," and it was about 10:30 at night and I was crying. I was crying in bed, thinking, I'm really hurt and I don't know how to deal with it. And every time I've tried to deal with it, I've never been able to fully deal with that hurt. And Bash helped me. He said, you've got a ball of pain inside you that you're terrified to deal with. And I said, I know. And he showed me the path and he showed me how to start to deal with it. So I started to work through this yellow workbook that we've got. I started to use the ACA steps. I started to look at the first step and read about this, what was wrong with me, and these laundry list traits really shouted out at me because I'd been using these laundry list traits to survive people, places and things since I was very, very young, one or other of them. And I started to talk, to trust and to feel. I started to make a relationship with myself. I asked my sponsor at the time for an honest relationship. My sponsor was like my loving parent. And to be honest, I shared with him about ACA, and he's in ACA now, but I kind of let go of him because I wanted an equal relationship, and I never felt equal in any relationship. I always felt like I was above them or below them. I never felt equal, and I had that spiritual dilemma that you get in Coda, which is I was either playing God in charge and in control, or I was being dependent and letting them play God in my life, It's not really like that today. I feel equal to most people because I know and I believe I am. So as I started to look at what I was terrified of dealing with, I started to look at it. The first thing I was terrified of dealing with was something called feelings. So I started to let go of this control that I was doing, and I started to look at the feelings. I started to write about my feelings and share them with myself. And I started to see how depressed, how dissociated, how messed up I was. And that I started to basically become interested in the pain that I'd been hiding from myself. And I felt enraged at what I'd been through as a child, really enraged. My parents were dead. I'd done all the stuff. I'd made amends to them. I was enraged at what I had been through as a child. Bash suggested I read On the Family by John Bradshaw. As I started to read that book, I started to see that I'd come from a physically abusive family, an emotionally abusive family. My parents never talked to me about sex for whatever reason. So in a way, it was covertly sexually abusive. I was intellectually abused by my father. I was the scapegoat. I was the lost child, and I was traumatized. And as a little kid, at 6 years old, I was sat in the corner, just getting hit, shamed, ridiculed, belittled, just getting hit and hurt for being myself. And I stored all this anger up inside me, and it really hurt. And all I wanted was to be loved, and I never got it. I just didn't get it, or I never seemed to get it. So as I went through the step work, I saw many, many things, and I saw where I came from, my origins, the family, and I saw where I learned I saw where I received the pain, and I saw where I learned to turn away from it. So I saw how I learned to deny my own feelings, my own pain, and my own reality. And, it really did hurt and it burned. So each day I read literature. I answered questions. If I didn't understand something, I'd go back and reread it, and I learned to trust my own perceptions. I learned one thing that I learned: there's no coming to consciousness without pain. I knew that. So it was a kind of trade-off of, do I want to stay in pain forever, or do I want to work through this pain one question at a time, one feeling at a time, one day at a time, one meeting at a time? And I found that kind of helped me because I was facing the truth. And I learned to slow down because I was a workaholic before, or I'd be in some or other addictive behavior. So I learned to slow down. The pandemic for me was a blessing. I know it was horrible for some people, but for me it was an awakening. And I slowed down. I learned to be with myself, to just be with myself. I needed to create safety, right? Because I never felt safe. I didn't get safety. I never felt safe in my family of origin. So ergo, I never felt safe in the world. It didn't matter where I was, I didn't feel safe. So I had to create a safe place, and I created that, and it was my place where I live here and now. I needed to do that in order to grieve and mourn my losses, right? And so in order to grieve my losses, it was like I didn't want to face them. I remember saying to Bash, if I start crying, I'll never stop. I'll die. I'll drown in my own tears. And I didn't like that feeling. And he encouraged me. He said, I needed to, he said, I needed to get a cognitive life raft. And I knew what he meant, because I was in a sea of despair. Emotionally, I was in a sea of despair. And I already had a loving, caring higher power. And I'm not really going to touch on that other than to say that there was something I always believed in as a kid that was a kind of wonder in life, and it got drowned out by people, places and things and painful situations, so that I couldn't see or experience the wonder of life anymore. I was traumatized as a child, further traumatized as an adult, and by the time I was a teenager, I was, just a walking wounded person trying to survive. So I learned that when I didn't express my feelings, I became depressed. So I started expressing my feelings on meetings, and those feelings were really hurt feelings. And I didn't hear a lot of other people sharing about anger and rage and shame and guilt. And I had a conversation with Bash one day, and it turned out I wasn't just fearful and angry. I was terrified as a kid. I was terrified, petrified, and I was full of rage. And this stuff really didn't come out in me until I was like mid-20s. Do you know what I mean? And so I turned into the very people who hurt me, and I turned into the victimizer, and I hated myself even more for that. So growing up in shame was one thing, but learning to turn to these aggressive, violent kind of behaviors and like responses to shame, to me, it made it even worse. It made me hate myself even more. And so I'd always felt depressed. I was the family scapegoat. Things always seemed to get taken out on me. My dad hit me for being myself. My mother didn't protect me from all of it. All of my family were violent towards me, and I saw this through the steps. This is the stuff I didn't want to see. I was trapped in my trauma. I was sat in the corner, 6 years old, and there was no escape but to dissociate, to shut down, to check out. So I'm a freeze flight type trauma response. I'm a freeze flight type. And I grew up self-sufficient, shy, awkward, full of fear, confusion. I felt different, felt alienated from people, and I was really scared. And I lost contact with my true self very, very young. And I learned it was not safe to ask for help. Furthermore, it was not safe not to know something either, because my dad intellectually abused me. So I learned to pretend and dissociate. I learned to put on a mask, or many masks. And I dissociated from myself to the point where, and you may have heard it said in a meeting, I didn't know who I was. I didn't have a sense of self and stuff like that. Well, my father abused me intellectually, and he expected that I would know the answer to things. Come on. He'd say, you're not dim. Come on, what's the answer? But he wouldn't give me an answer. And anytime I showed intelligence, he would say, oh, do you think you're clever? So I was trapped. I couldn't get out. It was a no-win situation. I just withdrew into myself, and fearful, sad, ashamed, lonely, wanting love. And I carried this self-doubt and this self-blame into my adulthood, along with that feeling of being wrong or inferior, like these negative beliefs. And I learned helplessness, especially in the area of relationships. And that really helped me in step one, because I used to get paid to teach these steps to people. But there's a lot of stuff I didn't see because I was in a lot of denial. I didn't see that I'd learned helplessness in my behavior as a child. And that child part of me was scared and was kind of the fear was dominating my experience. So I couldn't ask for help. And I'd just learned through coming on meetings that other people and the literature, that other people had this going on as well. So I didn't feel so lonely, but I did feel alienated and separate. Step 2 gave me clarity anyway. I saw it, by admitting I'm all fucked up in every way you can think of. I'd admitted something and got a lot of clarity. I was looking at the problem. I'd admitted a problem, and I found that there was a power in these meetings and there was a power in the literature. And I found that there was some kind of way out because I met other people who were struggling with the same problem and working through this. And so, step 4 was a big shame buster for me. I already had a keyring with a picture of myself as an adult on one side and a child on the other, and my screensaver as a kid, little Andy, running towards me at 5 or 6. And so I had a big picture of myself, and I've still got it in my bedroom. And it's me when I lost contact with myself. It's the real me, vulnerable, shy, frightened, but also strong and confident as an adult. And I got that by working through the shame inventory, the abandonment inventory. And I learned these defects of character. What we call defects of character in other programs are really coping strategies to cope with pain from childhood, And I learned that defects of character is a psychiatric term. It means I deny it in me and I project it onto other people. And that's what a defect of character really is. And because I couldn't face myself, I would project my issues onto other people. And I learned to look at myself and look at my stuff. And this is what I was burying: my losses. So the reason I was so angry was because I'd stored that anger to cover up the fact that I'd lost my sense of self. I'd lost my freedom as a child. I lost my sense of trust in myself and others, so I didn't talk about it. I lost my expression and my voice, so I didn't want to trust myself or others, and I didn't talk about this. And I lost my feelings because it was too painful to feel, so I lost the ability to feel. I didn't want to feel. I chose to push it out of existence. I lost my sense of self, and I lost my innocence as a kid, my sense of wonder. And my loss of self was that toxic shame. I believed I was faulty, worthless, etc. I lost my sense of direction. I lost my sense of identity, my ability to create and comfort and love. And I just lost me. I was gone. And I learned that the more I started to grieve this and admit it, the more it kind of came back. I think what really started to help me with the program was this. I'd get up to 6 and 7. I was full of shame and that, and it was 8 and 9. I had made amends to my father twice. He died of cancer. I made amends to him before he died of cancer, and my mother as well. But I couldn't get over the betrayal. I really couldn't get over the betrayal of my mother, my father, my sister, all of them. They'd all betrayed me, and I couldn't get over it. And so I learned. A guy came into my life called Dennis from Australia, and I met him two weeks ago, and he showed me a process by which to get in touch with the wounded part of me and learn to express it. So I became willing to start writing these letters from the viewpoint of a small child using Tony A's steps, because I couldn't see these people who were dead, and I had to admit. I had to voice from the viewpoint of a small child. I had to tell them how they'd hurt me, what I'd wanted, what I didn't get, and that I missed them, and that I needed to do this for myself to get peace. It wasn't really for them, it was for me. And I made amends to these people's spirits, and in this was some of the most powerful stuff I've ever had in recovery, When I made amends to my father and scattered his ashes and read that letter out to him, my 4-6-year-old self was saying, "You really hurt me, and I fucking hated it that you treated me differently, and you treated my sister different, and I grew up thinking I was worthless, and I grew up with these negative core beliefs that I'm afraid that I wasn't important. I was afraid I was worthless. I was afraid I was unlovable. I was afraid that I was too much trouble. And there was lots of these core beliefs, like I was afraid that I was wrong, that I was faulty, that I was no good. I had this stuff deep within me, and I had to learn to admit it. The negative core belief, I had to admit it to myself and to others, to kind of bring it out into the light, into the open, because I was hiding it, because I was ashamed of this stuff. And when I made amends to my sister, it was extremely powerful. It was a beautiful day. When I made amends to my father, when I read the letter out, it was a beautiful day. My sister died of drug addiction in 1993. When I read these letters, and I've continued to read these letters, something happens to me, I'm making amends from my spirit, telling my truth as a kid, as an adult, to the universe and to their spirit. And it freed me in ways that I can't describe, but I continue to do that. It's a long list of people that it's a long list of people that hurt me. And I found this way of doing it. So I only really came to this realization last week. Step 10 for me was a continual look at how life's affecting me, not looking at my faults, looking at my beliefs and what I believe about myself. And what I believe about myself has changed in the last 3.5 years because of my experience, because my experience is I couldn't trust anybody. I replayed my family of origin in these meetings in some form, thoughts, feelings, reactions. And so I started to look at that original pain, and what happened to me when I was a kid was that I kept getting shut down. So I wouldn't allow myself to shut down anymore. I wouldn't allow myself to bury my feelings anymore. And I kept sharing them with myself and a network of people who I've developed mostly in Limerick. But I answered a question last week. I still do step work. I still do it. Whatever other people want to do, I still do step work. And through 10, 11 and 12, step 10 for me is about discernment and that, and 11's about discipline and 12's about duty. But this is my 10, 11, 12, yeah? I continue with step 10 to improve with step 11 with practice in step 12. So I took a word out of each of those steps. I continue to improve with practice. When I don't practice, whether I improve or not, I don't know. But I found worth by just being with me. I don't have to be in a relationship. I don't have to be in a job. I don't have to have money. I don't have to be doing anything. I have worth. And I'll finish on this. I always felt empty. I always felt empty and hollow and something missing. And I have felt crazy, and I have felt like alienated. As I did this work and I got in touch with my own spirit and I cleared away the stuff that was blocking me, the painful life events, as I learned to trust myself, as I learned to develop autonomy, I found that I got back in touch with the real me, the kid that I'd left, that feeling of wonder. And I learned to approve of myself and say, I'm okay, even if anyone else don't think so, I'm okay. So I learned that promise was, I learned to approve of myself and tell myself, you know what, you're doing okay. You're doing all right, and I learned to do that and like to reparent myself. My self-esteem's better as I approve of myself daily. But I don't always approve of myself daily. I could be down on myself or be hard on myself. I don't fear authority figures as much. And I don't feel the need to approval seek for validation because I'm enough. I can share myself in a more real way if I choose to do so. I'm more tolerant of others, I used to really get angry at listening to denial in meetings. It'd drive me up the wall. And I'd think it's okay for them to be there. I'm okay with other people's weaknesses, if you like, because I've grown stronger and I'm more attracted to people who are self-actualizing and people who are kind of becoming their true self. I'm learning. I feel more balanced. I've got more peace. I have enough money, and money isn't a drive in my life anymore. My drive is to stay safe and keep security. I'm learning to be more relaxed, playful, and joyous. Still have trouble with that in a way because of the shame I experienced as a child. I've got less shame today. I'm choosing healthier relationships with people who are present and authentic. Setting and maintaining boundaries is a lot easier for me. I don't feel as bad. I don't feel responsible for other people's feelings as much, anymore, because I'm not. I still get uncomfortable when I set boundaries. I've still got fears, obviously, and they're less extreme, and I'm not as afraid of failure as much, or success. So I'm in touch with a lot more people. My world got a little bit bigger. I'm still quite private. I've accepted help from others in strange forms. I'm slowly integrating these traits. These laundry list traits, they ain't going away. They're in my DNA, if you like, and I have to watch my reactions, but I still react. I'm more functional, more able to live my life. And I've been able to choose to develop a better mindset towards myself and my life with the help of this higher power that I believe in. And I kind of finish on this. Halfway through step 8, I was writing a letter to my mother, and it was too fucking painful. And I got adrenalised, and I thought, right, I'm going to the gym. And I went to the gym on my bike like a rocket and smashed I broke my leg anyway. And it dawned on me in hospital that I was broken. My leg got infected, nearly killed me. It was that staphylococcus infection. I got that, and I had a big wound on my leg. Now, this laid me up and helped me to face me and my feelings, and a lot of childhood stuff from hospital came up while I was in hospital, and I was able to work through that and feel it and also reach out to others. I'm not broken anymore. I'm not infected anymore, but I do carry a wound on my leg, and I have got a wound that I'm very careful with, because through ACA, I've been able to get in touch with my inner kid, that wounded part of myself that just wanted to be loved, that just wanted to express themselves, that was angry, that was hurt. And I guess that I've been able to get in touch with who I really am, which is me, which is, and there wasn't any fanfare when I got well. There wasn't no great party. I just felt more whole, healthy, more sane, and just more in touch with reality. And I guess to talk about the fourth dimension of existence in AA, and I live in it most of the time when I'm conscious, and it's the here and now. And I'm here in the here and now to say, this is a hard journey, a long journey. Don't go it alone. There's only one wrong way to recover, and that is alone. So I chose to travel with you guys. Yeah. This journey's hard. We need each other. I've certainly needed emotional support and moral support along the way. And so I'll wrap it up by saying, I have no family. They all died. And so basically, thank you for being my family of affiliation and sharing yourselves with me on a daily basis. And with that, I'll say thanks for listening and thanks for letting me share. That's me.
Thanks so much,